Hi, good morning. This is just a live webinar from Zimmer and Peacock, specifically for our ZP Developer Zone. So I'll just, I know you guys will join on shortly. So we like to do this webinar every Thursday at 8 a.m. London time. So I do appreciate you guys joining on. Just want to make sure that shortly. So just doing a sound check. That was all. Okay. So welcome to the ZP Developer Zone for the 19th of November 2020. I appreciate everyone joining on. So I'll just run through today's agenda. So I just want to talk about the ZP Developer Zone. You know that we do this every Thursday. I want to talk about news from the ZP Developer Zone. I also want to just do a little sort of technical chat today, just on sort of one of the papers that came from one of our members, and then I'll do a quick summary. So today's webinar is, today will be short and precise. So let me go forward. I'll just say hello to everyone online. Right. So we obviously have the ZP Developer Zone, and every week we do a webinar, and we try to, brilliant. So the guys are joining. So every week we do a webinar, and we try to make it specific and interesting to our developers. And we also, so we have these webinars, we have these collaborations. We're also planning to have some workshops. And hopefully, now that sort of the COVID-19 vaccines seem to be on the way, hopefully we can actually have some of these workshops, face to face. So that's a real intention, and I can see Hasim is on as well now. So, morning, Hasim. I mean, I also want to say that, I know I've said it before, but we definitely have PhD opportunities in Norway. We have advertised, or we've promoted to the ZP Developer Zone, that we actually had a Marie Curie postdoctoral positions available, but we do have a PhD available at the at USN. So if you're interested in that, or somebody who's a young graduate who's looking for an exciting opportunity, then there is at least one PhD opportunity available at USN, which is near our location in Norway. So as long as they don't mind coming to Europe, then there's definitely a PhD available there. So the Developer Zone does have lots of benefits, and one of them is that we try to, make PhDs and postdoc positions available. So yeah, please let people know about that. Just some news from last week, really, but April, who's one of our kind of most active collaborations, was giving a talk in Indonesia, and I think he was giving it to one of the veterinary societies. So, I'll mention it later on. But obviously, April's very interested in. I think he actually did his PhD also in like tropical diseases, but he's very interested in Sura's disease, which is caused by that parasite Trypanosoma Evansi. And so he gave a talk, I think either last week or the week before. But anyway, it was well attended. Counted a good 40-odd people in the room. So that was nice. Just on a slightly different note, we actually just made a new product as well. This is the product here. So rather than just having one working electrode, it's got an array of 9 working electrodes. We do get lots of people asking us, well, I want to do multi-analyte detection, and it is possible. You can have a, working electrode functionalized for one pathogen or one analyte, and then the next electrode for the next, and the next for the next. So you can do multi-analyte analysis. And so we've just launched this, or we're just launching this product. I mean, it's still quite small. It's only 12 millimeters wide and 30 millimeters long. But rather than just detecting one thing, we could detect a whole panel of things. I just kind of mention it because it does come up often in our conversation. A called Aphrolis here, brilliant. Oh, yeah. Right. So so you can do many analyte detections using something like that. So yeah, the news from last week was that Apple gave this talk to a veterinary society in Indonesia, and Hasim was kind of introducing one of the young scientists in his team to the Anapot, which I have a smaller version here, and obviously we have our screen printed electrodes that go with it as well. So I just want bulk of things. Like I say, it's probably worth saying that our collaboration with April is starting to become fairly international now. That there'll be a meeting, and it will involve, theoretically, it actually involve 5 countries, because I count twice because of our Norwegian connection, because of our London connection. I count twice, but no, at the moment, so Abro's in Indonesia. We're going to talk to some teams in the Philippines, talk to a team in France, and then ZP will be involved as well. So it does show that these collaborations, ZP and the developer zone are trying to create, can go quite international quite quickly. So that's just a little bit of news that's going on. I want to sort of change gears slightly. I always want us to, have a technical content to these webinars, so indulge me now. That I want to bring back a paper that Hasim and I were authors on a little while ago, because I really feel like Abril is starting to really adopt this electrochemical technique, and I would be really keen on more of you to do it as well. So I just want to go back to this paper because Hasim is actually quite an expert on a technology called molecular imprinted polymers, MIPS, they call it. And I kind of like MIPS because what he's doing is essentially taking, he has anapots in Indonesia, so he has these small instruments. He's essentially taking these kind of small instruments, and he's effectively putting these, electrodes into those instruments, and then he's able to turn the screen printed electrode from just an electrode into a sensor, into a biosensor. And the way he's doing this, he's using cyclic voltammetry. What he's doing is he's taking these electrodes and he's putting in a molecule called 4-vinyl pyridine, and he's putting in a template molecule called pyrene. And so literally he has a solution of 4-vinyl pyridine and pyrene, and he just does cyclic voltammetry on the electrodes. And so he kind of goes from this kind of gold electrode to an electrode that's covered in a polymer. So the technique that he's using is called electro-polymerization. And it's a clever technique, but it's also quite, readily applied. And so I'll go into the paper a little bit deeper now. So what he's doing is he's taking a solution of his monomer and his templating molecule, and he's doing electro-polymerization. And every time he does a cyclic voltammogram, and we've talked about cyclic voltammetry quite a bit, he lays down a polymer. And then he does another sweep of cyclic voltammetry, and he lays down another layer of polymer. And then he does a third layer of polymer. So he's basically just building up the polymer on the surface just by using cyclic voltammetry. Now, I'll just bring in the software. But the wonderful thing about electrochemistry is that you can use it for the creation of your sensors, and you can also use it for the analysis of your sensors. So he's able to just kind of come into the software, choose cyclic voltammetry, set all the parameters that he wants to do, probably something along these lines, and he can literally go run then. So electrochemistry is powerful because in the paper that Hasim has done, he was able to use electrochemistry for the manufacture the sensor, and then he was able to do, and I'll show in a minute, that he was also able to use electrochemistry for the analysis of the sensor. So, like I say, he used a technique called electro-polymerization, and he did it in the presence of a templating molecule. And then what he did, he took the screen printed electrode and he washed it. What he's doing is he doesn't want any of this pyrene molecule. That's the thing he's trying to create a template around in the sensor. So he wants to wash it away. So he does a wash step. It's actually quite straightforward, though. You know, he makes a solution, he does electropolymerization, he then does a wash step. So effectively, he's able to take the screen printed electrodes in a two-step process of electropolymerization and washing, able to then make a sensing material on top of it called a molecular imprinted polymer, as described here. He washes it and he's got himself a sensor. Now the next thing he does, I mean, this is a nice paper, and and it got published in a good journal. The next thing that he's done really is he has this functionalized electrode now that he made by electropolymerization, and he exposes it to ferrocyanide. So he exposes it to ferrocyanide. He does a technique called differential pulse voltammetry, DPV. And again, I mean, it's the same software, except rather than doing cyclovoltammetry now, he comes in and does differential pulse voltammetry. So it does sort of say, he's used the same instrument to create the sensor using cyclovoltammetry. He's then used the same instrument. He can then use the same instrument to actually do the detection. And that is really powerful. I can't think of many techniques in the world of science and engineering where you can use a technique to create the thing that you're trying to create, and then able to test it as well. And that I've always found that really interesting about electrochemistry and electrochemical sensors. Anyway, so let's just go back slightly and say, so what he's done is he's created his MIP on top of the sensor, and he then exposes it to ferricyanide, and he does differential pulse voltammetry. So he gets, I say signal here, so he gets a current as he sweeps the voltage. But then what he's doing is he's doing subsequent experiments, and he adds in some pyrene, and the pyrene is essentially blocked the surface. So his signal goes from high to a bit lower. He then adds in some more pyrene, and the signal goes from medium to lower again. And then he adds some pyrene in, and he goes from low to kind of very low. So literally, this is really a blocking assay. And sometimes when we talk about antibodies and proteins, I sometimes use the word blocking assay, but he's effectively blocking the surface. And so when you look at the original paper, he has a blank, which had a very high peak current, which is equivalent to the green. And then he's increased the concentration, and the peak currents come down. But it literally was this mechanism where he had his MIP, he had his electrode, he added ferrocyanide, he got a high signal, he added pyrene, the signal went down, he added pyrene, the signal went down, and he added pyrene, and the signal went down. And then eventually then he's just able to plot peak height versus concentration. So as the concentration went up, I should have done it slightly differently, because I realized actually his literally, I might have to check this with him, his peak height actually goes down as concentration goes up. So I've actually got that around the wrong way, but I apologize for that. But he does have a peak height versus concentration signal. But it is, the cleverness is knowing what to do. Actually doing it, I think, can be fairly straightforward. So I would sort of encourage any of you really that if some of you are interested in things like aflatoxins, it's probably worth having a conversation with Hasim and saying, can we do an aflatoxin sensor using molecular imprinted polymers? Just get an opinion from him as to how, if he can or can't do it. But I do like this paper. I do like the fact that he's used the same instrument to create the sensor and then the same instrument to test the sensor. So you're effectively getting twice. You know, it's a good investment. Let's put it that way. Now, every week we kind of come online and we say, come on, let's do some collaborations, and we also try to get some technical content as well, so that so that we want everyone to be to sort of be able to do this kind of technology. So I just want to sort of, I know it's been a short one this week, but I wanted to kind of keep it short because sometimes we go long. But let's just do a sort of summary. So we have the ZP Developer Zone, and generally, if there's something you want to cover next week or you want us to talk about, let me know on the Discord server. And you know us, we're very sincere. We'll tailor the presentation towards your questions. So we do the webinar every week, and there'll be another webinar next week. I know that there are fresh graduates in Indonesia, potentially looking for new roles. We do have a PhD position available in Norway, so please tell them about it. It's also going to be advertised on the website as well. We are getting together an international collaboration with one of the members, and so if more of you are kind of interested in having these, and initially quite a small collaboration, but then maybe it can go quite international, then please sort of let us know. And then obviously, every week I want to give a webinar to say thank you to you all for being members of the Developer Zone. And I also want these webinars to kind of be useful to you guys. So let me know what you're interested in, and I'll do some research or try and think about some of the experience that we have and make the webinar appropriate to your question. So that's the webinar for this week. If you've got any questions, drop them on Discord. I do appreciate you guys coming along again. I do watch the chat, so if you've ever got any questions, I keep my eye on the chat while I speak, so I will answer any questions. But I can see that Sirif's here, and Dima is here, and I think April is here, and Hasim is here. So it is appreciated, guys. Like I say, there's still plans to do a workshop, and I think the first workshop we're going to do is in Jakarta. And hopefully with these vaccines coming along now, that will actually happen. All right. So Hasim and team, thanks very much for this week. Please drop me any email, or not email, but contact me on Discord server, and let's try and find out what you guys want to cover next week. All right. But otherwise, thank you very much, and we appreciate it.